I came out publicly and started working as Paula on the street in 2001. And then
So you were in uniform as a police officer as a trans woman.
yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so we took a little break, a dinner break, and we have a special guest here. It's a little dog with a big personality, and I'm
Yeah,
very
there
excited
he
to have him
is.
here. Mr. Waldo there. Hi. He's a very good security dog. He likes to go to the window and bark really loudly. He's very cute.
Yeah.
So you were talking about your basically your first day on the job as Paula.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and get back into that.
So this was late September of 2001. And I had offered to my command to take an indoor job.
Like a desk job. Okay.
So
So
that
paperwork and computer stuff all day.
right. And so that, people could get used to me.
Yeah.
And they said, "Oh no, you're a really effective officer. We need you on the street."
And this is at the same time that you're being threatened and being...
No, not yet.
Not yet. Okay. All right.
It seemed like people were very accommodating at first,
Okay.
but the longer I was working the street without a big problem, then people started trying to create problems.
Oh, okay.
Because I think that they thought,
They didn't think you were serious then, it sounds like.
I don't think that they thought I was serious, and I also don't think that they thought I would last. And I think that they thought that the public would have an awful reaction to me.
Yeah. And it sounds like you really enjoyed your job, even though it was really difficult. And we talked a little bit off camera, and you mentioned that some of your philosophy of being a police officer and how you were on the job was different than how they were trying to push you.
Oh yeah, so a lot of the officers that were my field training officers when I was first starting out as a rookie. A couple of them were really good officers, good people. I learned a lot from them, not only about what to do, but also how to be.
Okay.
Okay, they were good examples all the way around. But then I had a couple of others, 3 others or so, that were really hard nosed.
Okay.
Like the one who made me search that trans woman.
Okay. And by hard nose, what do you mean? Like using violence a lot, harassing people?
Yeah, or having an arrogant attitude.
Okay.
And yeah,
Like I am in power over you.
harassing people, stopping people on dubious
Okay.
pretense.
Okay. Yeah.
Your tag light's out and the tag light really wasn't out. That
Sure.
kind of stuff.
Sure.
Okay, I mean
Yeah.
these were among my field training officers. So they and so there's a mix of people, and but the prevailing attitude, the loudest attitude, were the hard-nosed guys.
Okay.
Honestly,
Okay.
and for to get through the field training program, I had to become what my field training officer wanted me to be.
Right.
In
Otherwise,
a way.
you didn't pass or whatever.
Right.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I'm not proud of trying to emulate that.
Okay.
But
Sounds like it would be kind of out of character for you.
it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then once I got out on my own, I could, I felt free to be how I wanted to be and work, but I felt the pressure, I was still on probation. I had to have good activity. And so I was
What does
out there,
good activity mean?
like a lot of arrests, a lot of tickets.
Oh no!
Right.
Here's all the dirt.
Right. It wasn't necessarily like a quota system.
It sounds like it though.
Well, goals and objectives.
Oh, goals
Okay.
and objectives. All right.
Okay.
Yeah. Euphemism upon euphemism. There.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Yeah.
And then young officers are expected to have good activity. Actually, it's not that hard to have good activity.
Sure.
Because there's
Especially if you're hard nosed, as you said.
not just hard nosed, just if you're aware.
Okay. Yeah.
People are out there doing stupid things in traffic all the time,
Sure.
and they even do that in front of police officers.
Sure.
I would make a lot of traffic stops on that kind of stuff, and that would lead to a lot of arrests, DUIs. Sometimes more.
Yeah.
Stolen cars. I was good at finding stolen cars.
Oh, wow.
I
Wow.
was good at getting into pursuits for a while.
Mm.
I was really pushing myself to try to be, the kind of cop that, even the hard-bitten ones respected.
Okay.
But at the end of 2 years, I was like, I don't like myself.
Okay.
I don't
What-
want to become this person.
What exactly didn't you like?
That type A competitiveness.
Okay.
Like just really pushing myself to try, and I felt like, if I keep doing this, then I'm going to care more about making an arrest than doing justice.
Okay. Okay. So justice was in your mind a lot.
Always.
Okay. And now you have a different career. Did you move to that right after being a police officer? Was that in your mind, like, I need to move towards social work?
Yeah.
Because you're a licensed social worker now?
Yeah, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. Before there were police agencies, there were a lot
like
of
the Pinkertons?
there was a lot of the policing, the law and order was the military.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And by design, in the United States, because of the Constitution, our military is not allowed, except in extreme circumstances of martial law, to act as a police force. So that was one of the reasons that police organizations popped up. Unfortunately, in the South, a lot of that was centered around capturing runaway slaves.
Right.
In the North, like in Boston and New York City and places like that, in the late 1700s, early 19th century, as the Industrial Revolution was beginning to pick up and urban centers were becoming more populated, there was a lot of crime and corruption, and the police departments were focused on trying to put a limit on gang activity.
But also, it seems like, from what I've heard, that the police were its own gang.
They
really.
were.
Yeah,
They were.
yeah. So
Yeah,
they
very
were
much.
right in there with it.
They were.
And oftentimes it was ethnically based, like the Irish. And,
Irish were new in the United States in the mid 19th century. A lot of because of the potato famine.
Sure. Yeah, immigration.
And immigrated here, and they were looked down upon and not considered white, believe it or not.
Oh, sure. Well, white is just a concept. I mean, it's, yeah.
And
that is
then
evolved.
But their mobility began with, they were the guys that wanted to, and guys at that time, they were the guys that wanted to be police officers.
Right.
And
to have some power
in these major metropolitan cities in the north,
Right.
the industrial cities and stuff, especially New York and Boston.
So how did you move from being a police officer into social work? Like, what propelled you to do that?
Well, some of it was when I was going through my ordination process, and then looking at becoming a vocational deacon, and functionally in the Episcopal Church, and then in the ancient church, deacons are ministers who are out in the world who bring the church to the world, and then the world to the church.
Okay.
And the
So they're
concerns
less-
of the world to the church.
They're less cloistered.
Right.
They are the people. They are among the people.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. And then so whereas a priest was usually the parish minister, and
a
then,
lot of distance there between lay people and a priest.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, and
Yeah.
and the deacons were more to the people. In fact, liturgically in the Episcopal Church, when the Gospel's read, it's supposed to be read if there's available by the deacon,
Right.
and the deacon comes into the congregation to read the Gospel. I mean, which is a symbolic of becoming part of the people.
Right.
And then when I was a deacon and I would preach, I tried to learn how to get out of the pulpit
Okay.
and preach among the people,
Right.
which meant that I had to unchain myself from the text.
Okay.
And so I learned.
So more interpretation.
Well, storytelling.
Yeah. Okay.
So I even took storytelling classes to learn how to tell a story.
Right.
And which is learn the story, but don't memorize the words.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that's how I started.
Yeah, and there's different steps too. So
Right.
Roman Catholic is in Latin, and then we're using the vernacular languages. We're moving away from Latin, and then there's people like you who would then interpret as well,
Right.
for lay people. Yeah, that makes sense.
In the form of storytelling.
Yeah, yeah.
And I would preach in among the people in the between the pews.
Yeah, yeah.
And I would interact directly with the people, and so.
And how is this related to social work?
Okay, so during that time, I was becoming oriented to an idea of social justice.
Okay.
And my exposure to Christian socialism, the social gospel. Are you familiar?
No,
with
I'm
those
not.
terms? Oh, so that was a major theological movement starting in the 19th century as an answer to the exploitation of the Industrial Revolution.
Great.
And it actually planted the seeds for what became the social work profession.
Yeah.
So Jane Addams, who founded Hull House in Chicago,
I can put links to this, by the way. All these things that you're talking about.
In the late 19th, early 20th centuries, was also part of the social gospel Christian,
Great.
Christian socialist movement, and reaching out to immigrants who came to work in the Chicago factories and to create community and teach them English and literate, helping them become literate.
So this wasn't missionary. This was dealing with people in place.
In place. Exactly.
Yeah, because there's that problem of being a missionary and bringing it out to people who have a different culture, who have their own religion, and it's
Right.
more colonialist, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to. That really transformed my approach to police work, and so there was an opportunity to do a community policing type of a job.
Yeah.
And I volunteered for it. I got it. And that was here in Oklahoma City, up and down the Classen corridor, which right now is called the Asian District.
Okay.
And then also a little bit north on the Classen corridor, on one side of the street there was a Crip set, and then a Crip gang, and they were one set. And then on the other side, on the western side of the street, there was another Crip set, and they didn't get along. They were all identified as Crips. They all wore blue, but sometimes the different sets would battle each other.
Yeah.
And there was a battle between the people up and down Classen at the time. I got out of my car and I got to know the people.
Okay, yeah.
I got to know the mothers of the gang members.
Okay, yeah.
And
yeah,
then,
so you were getting sort of embedded in the community.
And then I went out and I outreached to the Asian community, got out and checked the businesses there. I came upon what was at the time the Refugee Center, which was sponsored by the Vietnamese American Association, and I became a volunteer there, and I helped teach ESL classes. And I help people study for their naturalization tests.
Oh, okay. So you're going way beyond being a police officer.
Right.
You're doing other things.
It was my ministry.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
Honestly.
Yeah.
And my volunteering, especially at the Refugee Center, was my ministry.
Yeah. Was Oklahoma welcoming in a lot of
at that time
immigrants? Yeah.
Because of the way that the resettlement of the Vietnamese, Cambodian, and Laotian refugees that started in 1975 after the fall of Saigon.
Right.
Were coming in, and there was successive waves of refugees.
Yes, right.
So
also the Hmong people,
the
Hmong
as well. And the Min.
Yes.
And were two major ethnic groups that came to the United States from Laos.
Yeah. Right.
And and then even one really kind of minor ethnic group came here to Oklahoma City.
Yeah, that's great.
And so, they were being tormented and put in re-education camps and stuff like that because they had helped the Americans
Yes.
on
Right.
the Ho Chi Minh Trail, stuff like that. And so I volunteered at the refugee center for over 6 years, almost 7 years.
Wow, wonderful.
And that was really my ministry.
Yeah.
I made a lot of connections. People came to trust me. So when things were happening in the community, they would let me know what was going on and who was doing it.
Just in terms of the timeline here, is this before you transitioned?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, I can get real detail on some of the things, but at first I kind of was made fun of because I was doing that. Oh, officer friendly, blah, blah, blah.
By other police officers.
Right. But
Okay.
then I helped solve a homicide that was looking like it was going to be a cold case. And I got a lot of respect from that.
Oh, great.
And
great.
then I helped on a couple more cases like that.
Yeah.
And that's how I won some of these awards that I won.
Oh, great.
And I can show you my little shadow boxes here a little bit later if you want to see them.
Sure. Yeah.
But that was the way I came to police, and for pretty much the rest of my career, I volunteered for to be a community officer. So even after I came out.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, so back to one day.
So you have two transitions here. You have a career transition, and then you also have a personal transition.
Right.
So let's focus
So
on that a
back
little
to
bit.
the day that I came to work as Paul.
Mm-hmm.
I went on my days off, and I came back as Paula.
Yeah.
Because my command wanted me to stay on the street.
Yeah.
And I knew that this was an opportunity to fail.
So they were looking for a way to fail you, basically.
Okay, so the years that I had been working up and down Claxton and then the surrounding neighborhoods and stuff, I developed a lot of goodwill.
Yeah.
And the people, when they first saw me as Paula, they were curious and sometimes upset, but mostly asked me what's going on, and I would tell them.
Yeah. So you're just really honest with them.
And
About that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they didn't give me a hard time.
Wow, that's great. Yeah.
They gave me the benefit of the doubt, and I know that if I had been a real hard ass in the years prior to that, this was their opportunity to really mess me up.
Right.
And they did not.
Wow, that's great. Yeah.
And to this,
Yeah, because you deserved respect.
right.
Yeah, because you'd given them respect.
Well, it was
Yeah.
it became an exchange.
Yeah.
That's my experience of it.
Yeah.
That's how I saw it. And so the goodwill that I had sown before I transitioned came back to me karmic.
That's great. That's
And
great.
the people in the neighborhoods here were mostly very accepting and
Yeah.
even applauding me.
Oh, great.
And,
So people were like celebrating it with you.
I don't know about celebrating.
Okay.
But accepting.
But they thought you were like brave, maybe, or
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of them did.
yeah, great.
At least, and then others still respected me because I tried to take, be fair, and I tried to take care of their kids. I've had after I transitioned, I got to know the mothers beforehand, and sometimes when they knew that their sons, sometimes who were in gangs, would get in trouble, they would call me and say, okay, I know the officers are looking for my son, and he wants to turn himself in, but only to you.
Oh, wow. Wow. That shows what the respect they had for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, obviously they're worried about violence against their own children from the police, and they weren't going to encounter that with you. That's great.
Well, because
Yeah.
I had not been violent.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I mean, there was times I'd be chasing a kid that jumped out of a car, a
Sure.
stolen car.
Sure.
I knew who he was, and I'd say, "Okay, I can't catch you, but I'll see you tomorrow at your house."
Right.
And he'd stop running.
I know your mom.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And he stopped running. So here on the radio, it sounds like
that's hilarious.
headquarters up behind a stolen car going westbound, and then headquarters they're bailing out, running northbound. Headquarters two in custody.
Yeah.
And it sounded like I just jumped out like super cop.
Right.
But all I did was
Swooped up and
I
got
yelled
'em.
out their names and
Yes.
and said, "I'll see you tomorrow," and then they just walked back to me.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, no, it's just amazing.
That's hilarious. So when was being, I guess, a police officer? When did it no longer fit you, and you moved towards social work?
Well, after I came out and was fighting to keep my job, and finally
Yeah,
we reached a settlement.
because you experienced harassment
Oh,
from
big time.
organizations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I told you the FOP story.
Yeah.
And finally, though, we reached a settlement and things cooled down, and I was able to complete my last few years to get my 20. And then I worked 2 more years after that.
Oh, good. So you got a pension and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The turn for me came in 2011 with the Occupy movement.
Okay.
Where I was assigned to work downtown during that time because I was, our captain did a really good thing assigning officers to interact with the occupiers who were more cool-headed
Okay.
and tolerant. That was a deliberate choice.
Tolerant of police officers.
And tolerant of people.
Okay.
Like not necessarily the nicest all the time, but
Sure.
but not someone who would fly off the handle and
Okay.
get in people's faces or pepper spray a bunch of people like you saw in some of the other
Oh,
other places.
okay.
No, we didn't do that.
Okay, so you got police officers that were. See, I thought you were talking.
Even-tempered.
I thought you were talking about the activists. So
No.
so your department focused on getting cool-headed police officers to deal with.
Even-tempered, yeah.
Okay, all right.
To
deal with
to
activists.
deal with the activists. And so that brought me working downtown, and I started riding a bicycle called
Okay.
the Bicycle Patrol, even as big as I am.
Sure.
I'm a little bigger now than I was then, but I still rode. I was, down there every day interacting with the occupiers.
Yeah.
And
How did they take that?
a lot of them were my neighbors
Okay.
because I live in an arts district in Oklahoma City, and a lot of the activists were literally my neighbors.
Yeah. I
And-
did notice when I pulled up, one of your neighbors had sculptures outside of their house.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's our neighborhood.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, the Paseo neighborhood in
Okay.
Oklahoma City.
All right.
And one of the people that was that helped organize the Occupy movement just lives a couple blocks from me.
Oh, great.
And
Yeah, that was a very popular movement up until a certain point when I think they kind of fell apart. But yeah, it was pretty. It went for quite a while there.
for several months.
Yeah.
Our occupiers came in and occupied a part of downtown Oklahoma City in late September.
Yeah.
And they were there till early December.
Yeah.
Although it was really hard to pin down any one occupier on what they were doing,
Okay.
and I didn't agree with everything that they
Yeah.
said.
Sometimes organizations that are leftist leaning are purposefully disorganized. So yeah.
It seemed like that.
Yes. Because
But-
they want to be more egalitarian or build consensus, or
Right.
there's a lot of different opinions about
And it's
what.
a lot tougher.
Yeah, it's way tougher.
It's way tougher
Than a
to
hierarchy.
try to get that
Yeah.
consensus.
Yeah, absolutely.
And and once I feel strongly already about social justice. I felt strongly already about more equity in our society.
Yeah.
And I realized while I was down there policing our occupiers, I was on the wrong side of the picket
Okay.
line.
All right, put it there. I love that.
So
I love it.
and I worked in the department for 3 more years after that. And then
I'm glad you got a pension, by the way.
thank you.
That's a lot of time put in.
Yeah, I
doing
was post transition with the police department longer than I was before. I had 14 years as Paula.
that. Wow.
8 as Paul. So
Wow. And you put up with a lot of crap.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. But there was a lot of officers came around, and one time I injured myself and I got a MRSA infection,
Oh, that's very serious.
and I almost lost my left arm,
Oh, wow.
and I burned up all of my sick leave during that time, and my fellow officers donated their sick leave to me, to the tune of over 240 hours
Oh, wow.
to help me get through that.
Yeah. So 6 weeks, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah, wow.
6 weeks. And so I didn't use all of it, but once I got back full duty, then they reinstated the hours to the officers who
Yeah,
donated.
that's just in case people don't know about MRSA. They're staph infections where the antibiotics don't work on them, or we
Yeah.
haven't developed antibiotics that work, or there's antibiotic resistance, and it's a very serious infection.
Yeah, and I almost lost my arm.
Yeah, I know somebody who was in a hospital for several days just because they got a nick at their workplace, just a nick on the hand.
I think I got it from somebody that I had encountered on the street who had gangrene,
Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness!
and it got into my injury.
Okay. Wow.
Without me realizing
Yeah.
it.
And I gotta say too, as somebody who is new to Oklahoma City, there's a tremendous poverty problem here that is really quite visible and on the streets and untreated. It seems like there's a lot of untreated mental illness and that sort of thing.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's we cannot meet the demand.
Oh, it's really
Having worked in the mental health system,
yeah. People talk about California and New York, and
we cannot meet the demand.
I mean, it's almost to that level of California and New York, really.
Yeah, in our ways.
Yeah.
Like if you where some, like there's not like in Los Angeles, there's huge collections and
Sure.
huge communities.
Sure.
It's not exactly that
Yeah.
concentrated
Yeah.
here. It's more spread out.
But also, this is a rather small city,
Yeah.
comparatively, and it's everywhere. There's like tents and that sort of thing,
Yeah.
and it's pretty intense here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is, and
Is that what inspired you to be a social worker? By
some
the
of
way?
that?
Okay.
Because so.
That's very direct.
So after the Occupy, I had the opportunity to, so I was a beat officer and a bicycle officer. So that's more community oriented.
Right.
And I worked directly with a lot of people on the street.
Yeah.
A lot.
Right.
And I knew a lot of them. I still know a lot of them, actually.
Yeah.
And that I'll see them every once in a while when I'm out and about.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
they'll go,
yeah.
Hey, I remember you,
Yeah.
right.
Right.
That kind of stuff.
Sure.
And I, with my orientation towards social justice, I was looking at what do I want to do when I'm finished with my policing career. So I did this crazy thing. I ran for office.
Oh, okay.
for my House District 88
Okay.
as to be a state rep,
Yeah.
and I lost by 22 votes.
22 votes. My
Yeah, 22
goodness.
votes.
Wow. Was it a small race, or were there quite a few people who were voting?
It was a small race.
Yeah.
But even with turnout, 22 votes was really narrow.
Yeah, that is narrow.
And
Up in Fairbanks, there was a vote that the person who won by one vote, and it was a contested vote.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but up in Alaska, there's a lot of political apathy. Like people don't come out to vote
Right.
unless it's marijuana.
Right. Oklahoma's the same.
Yeah.
I mean, but in this earlier this month when Oklahoma voted on to whether to legalize recreational marijuana, they didn't show up.
Oh,
I don't
really?
know why.
That's so interesting.
But
They did in Alaska.
around 20% of the electorate showed up for this.
Wow. Usually,
But it
usually
was-
in races that I've kept track of, like small local races, it would be like 10% of the electorate or less.
Right.
And then suddenly it was 60%, and it was like, whoa.
Yeah. So it was a small race, but
Yeah,
it was still
22.
really
Wow.
narrow.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I thought about running again. I don't know. I
Did that take a lot of energy, or
Oh yeah,
a lot
it
of
was
talking to people?
huge.
Yeah, yeah.
I was knocking doors every day.
Yeah, yeah.
Making phone calls all the time.
And this is a very red place, and you're a
yeah,
trans
but
woman.
district, the House District 88, is very progressive. It's
Yeah.
the most progressive House district in the state.
Yeah, great.
And
I'm glad you took that chance.
yeah,
I mean, even though you didn't win, it's still, that's great.
yeah, our
Yeah.
current representative is Mari Turner, and Mari Turner is the first non-binary person elected
great.
to a state legislature,
Awesome.
and they are also Muslim.
Oh, great. Cool.
And got censured by our State House of Representatives last
yes.
week.
I just heard about that. Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah. I can link to that.
I endorsed.
We won't go into details about that. I'll just link to it.
I endorsed Mari on their first race.
Okay.
Because they first ran in 2020, and then they ran for re-election last year.
Great.
Got re-elected.
Cool.
And Mari has been very vocal about supporting trans people and
Yes.
gender diverse people.
Yeah, and that's so hard right now. It is so difficult.
It is.
We're just being inundated with bills, and they're even passing some of them, taking away trans people's rights, and not even only that, but criminalizing some things.
Yes.
Like literally criminalizing just being trans in various ways, like
Yeah.
out in public.
Yeah.
So it's so weird. I didn't think we would get to this spot. Like, I thought we were making progress. Maybe I'm naive or something.
We are culturally.
Okay, you think
Okay.
so?
Oh yeah.
I don't think so.
Because so we're the same generation coming out.
Sure.
Okay. How many people knew the word transgender back then?
Not too many, but I don't like that people are talking about trans people now, because the way they're talking about them is usually in a bad way.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
In red states for sure.
Yeah.
And then if you look at some of these these social media pundits like
Yeah.
Matt Walsh and Michael Knowles
Yeah.
and Jordan Peterson.
Okay, enough
Yeah,
enough already. even some trans people are in there doing it,
I know.
Yeah, it's
I
pretty
know.
awful. It's
Yeah,
pretty awful.
I feel betrayed by that.
Anyway, let's get back to you and social work.
Yeah.
So where are you at with that right now?
Okay, so one of the things that appealed to me about social work is when I looked at the National Association of Social Work Code of Ethics.
Yeah.
It places a big emphasis in the Code of Ethics on social justice.
Yeah.
And I decided that I had worked for justice on one end of it, in criminal justice, which focuses on individual responsibility. But social justice is just, focuses on systems.
Yeah.
And I wanted to try to work to do work to change systems.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so
And I've never met an individual who is completely individualistic. Every person is part of a community, right?
well, we are people, and as a species,
Yeah.
we are communitarian.
That's right. That's right.
And whether people want to admit it or not,
That's right.
we're reliant upon many people we don't
Yes.
even know for our running water, our
Yeah.
electricity,
Yeah.
because of divisions of labor
Yeah.
and organizations and structures and systems in our society. Nobody is independent.
That's right.
If you try to go out in the woods and be totally independent, you'll be working your ass off to survive. That's
Yeah.
it.
And you'll be alone. I know people who try to do that sort of thing, and then they come into town and they will talk your ear off because they haven't talked to somebody in a month or two, and they're a little bit off, actually, because they don't have enough social contact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew a guy who was a prepper,
Yeah.
former colleague at the police department.
Sure.
And he was talking about his little compound he's building and everything.
Whatever. People can do that.
And I said, how many people are you going to have guard your compound? Just me and my
Yeah,
family. And I
right.
said, so when you're patrolling your perimeter, what happens if you break your ankle?
Right.
Well, he didn't think about it.
Yeah, and also, I mean, it's people. I mean, I don't mean to talk badly about prepping, because prepping as a concept is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Like,
No, but the way he was doing it.
yeah, but there's a way that people take it and they go to an extreme. Like, it's it's a very American thing,
It's a
unfortunately.
me against the world.
Yeah, me against the world.
Like this mountain man mythology that we have from, the 19th century kind of thing. These hermits.
Yeah, but
They even had to come into town.
Yeah, they always did. But I don't mind at all that people think of like how they can be self-sufficient, like learning how to can stuff. If you live in a place where there's hunting and fishing, learning how to do that, being safe with firearms,
Right.
All that stuff I think is really great. Learning how to fix things, how to sew,
Yeah.
all that stuff,
No, I mean those are wonderful skills to have
Yeah.
no matter where you are.
Yeah, and you're learning them from other people usually.
Usually. Yeah, it's a passed down thing.
Yes.
You're not born knowing how to do that stuff.
That's right.
So anyway, that's what I wanted to do, and because I'm trans and I was oriented towards doing community practice as a social worker.
Okay, yeah.
But there's not much opportunity for a trans community practice person in Oklahoma.
Okay.
So I switched over to doing direct practice,
Okay.
and so that I could make a living.
Mm-hmm. And direct practice means that you do
More-
therapy, or
I do.
Uh-huh.
I am a therapist, I do individual, group, and family therapy,
okay.
couples, but more often individual therapy.
Yeah.
My social, I guess, more my community practice is stuff that I volunteer.
Okay. Yeah.
So I do a lot of educational outreach
Yeah.
stuff. I'm doing a workshop at the Oklahoma Social Work Summit later on this month.
Does that have to do with like being trans, like
Yeah.
trans issues? Okay.
So the first year
Yeah.
that I did that,
I've heard that you're a very active activist.
well, it depends what
Yeah.
you mean by that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not the kind of person that I'm out in the street marching and shouting.
There's all
I
different,
have done that.
There's all different ways to do activism. Yeah.
That's not my style. I'm not. I don't like to confront people like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I have done that. There are times that that's tactically necessary, but
Yes.
it's not the strategic necessity.
Well, that's debatable. We won't open that can of worms. But there are different kinds of activism.
No, I mean that can't be your only. What I mean by that is
Yeah.
it can't be your only tool in the toolbox.
Yeah, right. And some people are very skilled at that.
Yes.
And I so appreciate them, because I'm somebody who cannot do that kind of work because I get panic attacks, actually.
Really.
Yeah, but there are people who are very skilled at that, who can do it, and who can support people who do that.
Yeah.
But then there's other things to do. Like, you're doing direct support, it sounds like, of a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's some trans people that
Yeah, I am working with. I'm working with a whole bunch of different people.
Yeah.
I'm working with some children.
Yeah.
Not always about trans issues.
Yeah.
Gender identity issues. It's about
Just being a human.
about trauma mostly.
Yeah, yeah. I myself, when I was looking for a therapist, I wasn't necessarily looking for somebody versed in trans issues, because I'm sort of post-transition. That's kind of, on the back burner. But I was looking also for a trauma specialist.
Right.
Somebody versed in something in particular, that I needed help with. So yeah, it can be you can cover a lot of things.
All
Yeah.
of my clients who are trans were already transitioning before they
Yeah.
came to me,
Yeah.
and none of them are really addressing transition issues as much
Yes.
as they are trying to develop their coping skills,
Yeah.
to put up with rejection and microaggressions,
Sure. Discrimination.
with their anxiety, with discrimination and
Yeah.
depression. I mean, that's standard stuff.
Yeah. And people always wonder, like, why aren't trans people happy after transitioning? Well, there's a lot that goes on. There's a lot of discrimination. Like I was just saying, there's family issues. There's all kinds of things that trans people have to deal with, even after they transition.
Most usually it's the employment.
Yeah. That's a big
Oftentimes
one.
is trying to put up with, learning how to cope with employment situations.
Yeah.
I have a lot of experience with that.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do.
And so I had to learn the hard way in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And so I not only have, my treatment modalities, but I do have some practice wisdom
Right, right.
that I can help.
Well, it's always, I find, that it's always the people who've had, something happen, and then they decided to go into a helping profession.
Yeah.
They're always the best. Always. It isn't some person who went to like a super fancy school and doesn't have any experience. Like, I look at those people a little side-eyed. Like, what are you doing?
They're going to be good
Maybe.
if they stay with it and they analyze
Sure.
themselves and reflect on things.
Sure.
And then allow themselves to grow.
Yeah.
They will be good. The ones that
The ones that I
think that
trust.
struggle more.
The ones I trust, though, I have experience.
Right. The ones that struggle more, I think, are the ones that are trying to be perfect.
Yeah, yeah. Or
And-
to do good things for other people, those other people.
Yeah, they follow the rules to the letter in a lot of ways, which is good. But sometimes, human relations isn't a step-by-step program.
Right.
Establishing a rapport and getting people to trust with
Yeah.
you, there is no
And
there is no formula.
There's
It's-
also harm reduction
right.
rather than, oh, you need to do this or this.
Right.
Yeah.
And I hardly ever give direct advice unless
Yeah.
they ask directly. But mostly I try to help people come to their own conclusions.
Yeah. And healthy coping skills, healthy living skills.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And then it's mostly relational skills.
Yeah.
Okay, so I overeat.
Right.
I'll admit that. I have my challenges and my
I just
struggles.
got recently sober a couple months ago.
Really?
Yeah. a couple months ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Very difficult. It was a bad coping strategy.
Yes, it becomes destructive.
Yes,
It's useful and then destructive.
Yes.
Eating that way is for me to a degree,
Yeah.
a large degree. But I also though I have strong skills in human relations, interpersonal relations.
Yeah.
And I can help impart that to my
Yeah.
clients.
And a lot of times too, like, the reason why that's so important is because trans people are often isolated. There's a lot of secrecy around them. They've had to kind of code switch, a lot of times. So developing relationships and healthy ones is so important because of that
that's
isolation. Yeah.
One of the things that being a police officer helped me develop those skills,
Oh, really?
because I had to interact with people, whether I wanted to or
different
not.
kinds too.
And then the way that I
Yeah.
chose to be a police officer is trying to be a solution oriented instead of
Right.
jail oriented.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. I know we have such a problem in this country. It's like, go to jail. We have such a huge jail population.
Right.
Yeah.
And then if I could help talk people into cooperating instead of having to take someone to jail,
Right.
I felt that was a better.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the real work right there.
That's and so I developed the skills that I think that are useful for me as a social worker in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, we have a kind of a culture-wide discussion right now about like defunding police, funding community stuff instead. We have these pots of money, and where are we going to put them, and how are we going to emphasize, change in our society? And some people want to completely get rid of policing. Some people want a different kind of policing. Some people want more social workers out there doing things.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about that? Where would you land there?
I think social workers working with the police hand in hand is a good thing.
Yeah.
Because social
Also
workers,
chaplains too. I think there should
Yeah.
be more chaplains out there.
Yeah, I agree too.
Yeah.
Some of the chaplains that have worked with Oklahoma City Police Department are awesome.
Yeah. And they don't have to be sectarian. They don't even have to be Christian or anything like that.
One of the best that I worked around. He was a police officer, retired, but he still does chaplain work. He's a pastor, and then of course we had Chaplain Poe. He's pretty conservative, but he really has a heart for people, and his
Yeah.
wife too, and did really a lot of effective work
Yeah.
with officers, meeting them where they are.
Yeah.
And when I encountered Chaplain Poe, even after I came out, and especially his wife, they were very decent to me for the most part. I didn't agree. They didn't get me, but they were never awful to me.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, chaplains are essential. Social workers, I have a systemic look at the world, whereas police officers have an individual responsibility look.
Okay.
And I think those cooperating with each other can really bear wonderful fruit. Because when you look at too much individual responsibility, you get too many people in jail.
Yeah.
And you're not looking at systems and trying to fix the systems that keep on putting people in jail.
Yeah. Right.
And then if you're a systems approach and you can't see and you're not as able to hold people accountable for their individual acts. And sometimes they're awful.
Okay.
Like murder,
Sure.
sexual assault. That they need to be held responsible for those things.
There's different ways of doing that, though.
There is. There is.
But I used to know a community. I used to be part of a. I was not directly in this community, but I knew people who were in it. It was an anarchist community in Minnesota, and they, because there's such a low prosecution rate for sexual assault, instead they took responsibility for this themselves. If the person who had been assaulted would, agreed to it in a totally consensual way, they would, the people in that community would not completely reject the person who had done the assault, because what happens then is that person just moves to another community.
Yeah.
And reoffends, basically assaults more people. And
Yeah,
so they
the
would,
more isolated they are, the less ability they have to recover.
well, there's that aspect,
And then
but then also people aren't watching that person.
No, they're not.
No. So
And holding them accountable.
Yeah, and holding them accountable. And so this community would hold that person accountable and watch them and make sure that they made some reparations if the victim wanted
the
that.
restorative justice model.
Restorative justice model. That's exactly what it is.
I know.
But it was at the community level, not at
Yeah.
the bigger level.
And I think that we need to have a more of a restorative justice model because a crime is a broken relationship, and the best way to address that crime is to try to mend that relationship.
Yeah, if the people
Instead of
involved
just
want
tossing
that.
people away.
Yeah.
If they want that.
Yeah,
that.
yeah. And that's a big risk, and it's it would take a lot of strength, and some people, they just don't want that, and that's their right. They just don't want that.
It is.
Yeah, yeah.
But look at Matthew Shepard's parents. They didn't want his murderers to be put to death. Famously.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They were famously gracious.
Yeah.
And even
For a horrific crime.
Horrific hate crime.
Yeah.
And so they advocated against the death penalty for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's their own beliefs. You know. Other people might feel a bit differently about that.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, yeah.
And they have a right to.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so hard. It's so hard, because we're coming from this place right now where we just want to put everybody in jail. How do we change that?
We're not focused on rehabilitation. We're focused on retribution.
Yeah, in fact, they're getting rid of programs. Like, it's very hard to do prisoner education. There's all kinds of hoops that you have to go through to do that. They're taking away privileges from people who are incarcerated. They're putting more people in isolation. There's private prisons, which have...
awful.
Oh, so awful. So awful.
Capitalizing off people's misery.
Even hardcore libertarians that I knew at Harvard were against that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And these are like the really elite libertarians who are like,
people should not profit from misery.
But these people were like, we should privatize everything. And they were like, no.
Not prisons.
Not prisons, because it brings out the absolute worst and torture, basically.
Look at some of
people.
these, like the juvenile justice program in
Yeah.
Pennsylvania. You know, where that judge was
Oh, I don't know about
prosecuted.
this.
I forget his name off the top of my head. His
Let's take a break, and you can look it up if you like.
Well, Judge Civarella.
Okay, all right.
He was routing in his judgments kids to juvenile detention.
Okay.
Even for crimes as minor as misdemeanor possession of marijuana.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That ordinarily in most places would be a fine and maybe community service.
Sure.
He'd routed them to detention, and then he was getting kickbacks for it.
And when kids go into detention, they learn more criminality sometimes.
Often.
Yeah.
Because
become
it's
harder.
It's a system of retribution and
Right.
isolation and
punishment. Yeah.
and not
Right.
focusing on rehabilitation,
Right.
even in the juvenile justice
Yeah,
system.
and by juveniles we mean minors, we mean kids.
Right.
This is happening to kids that we're doing
Yeah.
this, you know. So yeah.
Anyway,
Woo! These are big subjects here that we're
I have
talking
an
about.
ideas. I have a problem being a trans woman and being in conversations. I don't get to sit in the same rooms with people who have power and influence. I myself don't have much.
Yeah.
I have my experience. I have my story.
But it sounds like you're not doing maybe this big stuff. Like I do know trans women who are talking to legislators, and they're
Yeah.
very pointed, and it's almost like they're
have-
lay lawyers or something. They don't have law degrees, but they're right there. They
I
know
have
all the
done
stuff.
that, but
Yeah.
right now the temperament in Oklahoma,
Yeah.
they won't talk to us.
Right.
I mean, one.
Well, I know somebody who is doing it right now.
I do too.
Yeah.
And she's not having as much success getting people to talk to her as she had in the past, as I have had in the past.
Okay, interesting.
Because they're
so in
like-
the past it was a little better.
It was.
Wow.
2016, I was very active up at the Capitol,
Okay.
and we developed really good relationships with some of the more moderate Republicans,
Okay.
and they made movement to quash, to stop a lot of this hate legislation.
Yeah.
But right now, the legislators, they're so determined
Yeah.
to push their agenda,
Yeah.
and they're not listening to us at all. They're not.
Yeah. It's interesting. I feel like we've moved really far right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's because of the Dobbs decision, Roe v. Wade being
Yeah.
overturned.
Even the Democrats, like I say even the Democrats, but the Democrats are also moving right because they're not really pushing back against this all
Yeah.
that much.
Yeah.
They're just kind of letting it happen.
Yeah.
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 So just to kind of round out this interview, what would you like to see here in Oklahoma? For trans people, what kind of things would you like to happen? I mean, we were just talking about something really awful happening. This kind of far right push.
I don't know in Oklahoma right now.
Okay.
I mean,
Because it used to be okay, and
I don't know.
okay,
I mean, there's some legislation that's being proposed. The Women's Bill of Rights, Senate
Okay.
Bill 408. That it's vaguely, the vague language could become an effective bathroom ban.
and as somebody who used to be a police officer, when you see vague language, what does that say to you?
Danger.
Okay, but why?
Because there's so much room for interpretation.
Okay.
And then the discretion.
Okay.
Well, the discretion level of one officer isn't the same as the discretion level of another.
Okay,
You
so
know,
it would be up to the individual because it's so loosely loose.
and there's a
in the
lot of
wording.
room for abuse.
Okay. So that's how it's authored, basically, to include a lot of bias.
I think
in
it's a
there.
combination of deliberate bias, but it's also a lot of ignorance
Okay, yeah. I can imagine that there's a lot of ignorance.
and whistleblowing.
Yeah.
And whistleblowing language is always vague.
Oh, you mean like dog whistles?
Dog whistles.
Dog whistles,
I'm sorry,
yeah.
not whistleblowing. Dog whistles.
Dog whistles, yeah.
Dog whistles. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's always vague. It's always
Sure.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Wink, wink, nod, nod.
Right.
You know, kind of
Right.
like, and some of the language in these bills is like that.
Okay.
So the drag ban, you know, effectively, it's not adding to anything to the law.
Sure.
The indecency law is
You already have something
that's
like
already
that.
there already
Yeah.
is, and the drag ban isn't adding to it.
Right.
But what it's doing is it's focusing on, not necessarily drag queens, but anyone who's dressed
Yeah.
in clothing not normally associated with their sex assigned at birth.
Right.
And it could,
And that's what generations before us had to deal with.
yeah.
So it's, I mean, it's wild that that's coming back.
And it's really, I think that the law is, as it's, it's probably going to pass here in Oklahoma. And I think
What do you think people are going to do about that locally?
I think the intent is more to put a chill on
Yeah.
things,
To
to
threaten-
make people
threaten people.
afraid, and
Yeah.
then of course
Yeah.
there's going to be citizens who will misunderstand, don't realize that there's a particular standard of the law that needs to be met
Okay.
to call it indecent or prurient, and maybe some police officers will take it too far.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It does seem like a threat because I mean, if we think about the spirit of our Constitution and individual liberty, let's get back to that individual part there, right? It seems like the social conservatives right now are just scrapping that. You don't have any liberty. We're going to tell you what to do.
No, what I'm telling people right now is like, trans people, gender diverse people,
Yeah,
are specifically are the canaries in the coal mine
yes,
of democracy.
yeah,
And if you want to see what tyranny looks like,
that's right.
look at what's happening in red states to gender diverse people
That's right
now.
That's right.
And do you think if they're successful on marginalizing us even more than we are,
Yes.
that they'll stop with us?
Yeah.
Then you are really,
I don't think
fooling yourself.
I don't think they're going to stop.
No, they wouldn't.
I'm not.
They wouldn't.
Once they're successful a little bit, they're like, yeah, let's really go for it.
Regulating trans and gender diverse people is going to open the doors to regulate women
Yeah. Right.
and restore some gender norms and expressions and expectations
arcane stuff
that are going to oppress women.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And it's gonna bleed over
because they all think that feminism is bunk anyway, right? So they want to go to pre-feminist stuff,
And I mean, they're already doing it in Missouri. There was some laws, some rules in the Missouri state legislature to prohibit women from wearing sleeveless tops.
Oh, I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
Whoa. Sleeveless. Wow.
Right.
What about swimsuits?
Yeah. Like some of the women's sleeveless blouses in the summer.
Sure.
They're still attractive and they're still appropriate.
Yeah.
But they want
spaghetti
to ban that.
strap or something.
Right. They want to not spaghetti strap. Just sleeveless.
Okay, sleeveless. Okay.
Yeah. And
Wow. Woo.
Right. So that's the beginning. They're pushing it. See how far they can go.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they're definitely pushing it. I mean, a lot of people in Texas are really afraid of. I mean, there's a lot of things that people are afraid of in Texas right now, but they're thinking about basically outlawing hormone therapy for trans people.
Everybody.
Like everybody. Yep.
Oh, and they're also
everybody.
That bounty law.
Yeah, and the bounty thing, right?
The $5,000.
Right. Right.
Which is
catch somebody cross-dressing. Woo.
Or being prurient or indecent, but. What is that?
Yeah, what is that?
What is that?
What is that?
And then I forget the bill. I think it might be House Bill 2177 here in Oklahoma that is part of restricting, where they won't pay for any like Medicaid. For hormone therapy for anybody.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Kind of like the way that they
Is it like they're pulling federal funding?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, what that does is it effectively shuts down clinics that would offer services to trans people, and then doctors get afraid
Right.
to actually
to
help.
actually do it. And
to
so
help
it's
trans
that
people.
chilling effect.
Yeah.
But they're also going as far
Yeah.
as talking about making it illegal
Yeah.
for health insurance companies to fund
Right.
gender affirming care, period.
So they're talking about private entities.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And which, not, there's going to be challenges on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't this the party of small government?
Not in my experience.
Not in my experience either. There's a lot of big government going on here.
Right.
So whenever you hear conservatives say small government, you next thing you say to them is you're a liar.
Well, one of the things that when I was first coming out, this
Yeah.
is over 20 years ago
Okay.
now, but a woman who was very conservative, I knew her for a long time, and she said, Paula, I really don't understand what you're doing.
Yeah.
But to me, you represent freedom.
Yeah,
A
exactly.
conservative person said that.
Exactly. Yeah.
And yes, that's
Yeah.
what we do.
That's right.
Is we want to talk about self-determination.
That's right.
Autonomy.
Mm-hmm.
These kinds of essential issues.
Privacy, too.
Our own privacy, our own
Mhm.
pursuit of happiness.
Yes.
Pursuing who we are
Mm-hmm.
is the most American thing,
Yeah. And against tyranny too.
and against tyranny. Yes.
I think that's a good place to end right there.
Okay.
I love that. Yeah. Let's end on freedom there.
On freedom.
Freedom for everybody.
Yes. Let's forge our freedom and be that we're what we don't want to be, but we're kind of like
Yeah.
at the spear point right
That's
now.
right.
aren't
That's
we?
right. And thank you so much for doing direct work with the community here. That's really important, and I applaud you for doing that. It's very difficult.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyway, thank you so much for meeting with me.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Love
you.
it. I love meeting activists of different sorts,
Thank you, Shane.
especially since you have like a religious background and
Uh-huh.
just so diverse. I mean, the military, police, and social work now, and
Yeah.
all right. Good night.
Good night. Bye-bye.